Okay, today just me. Usually we have more people speaking, but I thought that this topic is probably better served with one person, and the topic is interviewing skills. This is one of my favorite topics in investigations, and I'll share some of the basics of how we use interviewing skills, interviews in the course of forensic investigations. The slide here says ACFA UK chapter annual general meeting. Sorry about that, but 1 month ago I was giving this same presentation to ACFA, which is Association of Certified Fraud Examiners UK chapter, about 30 or 40 people, and it was well perceived. And it was mainly the investigators, internal audit officers of UK-based companies, international companies, who are also certified fraud examiners, and they attend ACFA meetings, and it was in GT offices. Okay, can you show next slide, please? Why I study, I mentioned I do like interviewing skills, and I study it personally. I very much enjoy it. But how it all started, on the picture on the left, I'm with a group of police officers in the US, in North Carolina, and we've been taking the first course of Don Raben, the guy in the blue sweater. Here is Don, yeah. And the others are armed police officers or various sheriff. You can see some badges and guns there, but I'm the only person on that picture who is from corporate sector. But it was very interesting. It was 2015, start of the journey in studying interviewing skills, and this is a big undertaking, I should say, because right now I'm on ITRP interviewing training recognition program level 1. It's already 8 years I'm studying that. It's a lot of courses, and this is art more than a science, so there's no like stopping point where you graduate from some university and you have a degree that you're a good interviewer. No, it's not like that. And then, the journey 9 years after 2023, I'm in the Victoria Albert Museum. This statue there, you may have seen it, is called Truth and Falsehood. Truth and Falsehood. And you see that truth is pulling falsehood by the tongue. And this is very good analogy, because interviewers, they ask questions, and this is our main weapon, if you wish, to ask questions and to maintain communication. And by asking questions and maintaining communication, getting answers, we can understand where is truth, where is falsehood. Okay, and in the middle, it's the other picture analogy of art, because it's martial art. I'm also doing martial arts, and it's like in martial arts, there is no level where you can stop and say, I'm like master and I've done it, I've stopped. You always continue to learn interviewing skills. Next slide, please. Okay, what we are going to cover today is how interviewing skills and interviews are related to fraud and fraud investigation. Who is interviewer, like what it takes to become a good interviewer. Planning and preparation is very important. Questioning strategies and detecting deception. Next slide. Now, fraud. Why interviewing skills are so important if you deal with fraud? Let's take any definition of fraud. You can Google yourself after this training, and you will see the word manipulation or lies or deception in there. So, for example, this definition here, fraud is wrongful or criminal deception intended to result in financial or personal gain. So, fraud is by definition connected to deception. That's why if you investigate fraud, if you deal with fraud, if you have any professional relationship to fraud, you have to know how to deal with deception. And deception is usually it's detected through human communication, and that's why interviewing skills are so important. If you investigate fraud, you have to be able to detect deception. You have to be able to deal with it. It's not enough to detect when somebody is lying to you. It's more important to know what to do with it. Next slide. Now, interviewing skills. I can split the interviewing skills in two wide categories. One is hard skills or technical skills, and the other is soft skills or personal skills. And I'm telling you right away that soft skills are more important than hard skills. You can learn the theory of questioning, strategies of questioning. You can learn all the clues of deception and know like when person is likely to be truthful and when it's not the case. But if you don't have soft skills, if you cannot relate to that individual personally, it's very hard to use these hard skills. And soft skills are more difficult to get. It takes more than technical training. Basically, you have to be able to maintain act of communication with any person at any time in any circumstance, because this is usually what happens in fraud investigation. You don't select who you're going to talk to. It may be CEO of a company, or it may be temporary worker cleaning up the offices, and you have to relate to that person equally well. That's why I like this phrase here. At the end of the day, how the interviewer treats the interviewee is the most critical factor. And we'll have some videos, some real examples, and you'll see how important it is, hopefully. Okay, I have some books. These are good books. You can take note of them. If you're interested in the topic, you can go on Amazon and see these books. They're not very expensive and they're easy to order. And the slides will be available to you after this training. Next slide. Okay, now coming back to the hard skills. There are 3 things which interviewers should know or should know how to do. 1 is elicit response, 2 is detect deception, and 3 is gain compliance. To put it in the most simple terminology, elicit response is if you can make any person to talk to you on a consistent basis for whatever long period of time is needed. Therefore, it's like if you're a good communicator, you will probably be able to elicit response from people. You have to be able to maintain continuously the conversation with person who doesn't know you and who has no particular interest in talking to you. This is it. Detect deception, it's the second quality of interviewer. You have to be able to understand where person is truthful and where person is deceitful. And this takes some training, this takes some technical knowledge, but also it takes a lot of experience and a lot of doing interviews and observing how interviews are done and understanding how psychology of people works to be able to catch this moment where people are trying to deceive you. And remember, this deception, falsehood comes in different shapes and forms. One is quite open and obvious falsification, when people tell you blunt lies. That's not truth at all, and you may know it, for example. But the other type of deception is where people just withhold information. They just go around and don't talk about the sensitive topic, and this is most difficult to detect because it's not something which people say, it's something which people do not say. And you have to be very much prepared, and you have to have all these skills mastered to be able to catch the lies, the falsehood by omission. And finally, gain compliance. Once you detected deception, what are you going to do? Like how you get this person to tell you the truth, because we as interviewers, investigators, our purpose is to get this person, witness or suspect, to tell us the truth. But what happened actually in, for example, financial crime or any other crime which we are investigating. We want this person to tell us what really happened, and this is against their own interest. This is why it's difficult, because by definition they don't want to tell you the truth, and you have to persuade them to tell you the truth. Next slide. Okay, planning and preparation. I'm going quick through the technical slides because I think the practical is more interesting than technical. So forgive me if I'm speaking too fast. Planning and preparation, it's the saying goes as follows: fail to prepare, prepare to fail. As easy as that. If you do not prepare, if you go unprepared in the interview room, you're likely to fail in all probability, because think about it this way. The person who you're going to interview has a lot of interest not to tell you the truth or avoid your questions or somehow get out of the situation. And he is definitely more prepared just because it's in his interest not to tell you the truth. He was thinking, he knows that interview is coming, he is preparing what he is going to tell you. If you are not prepared, you are going to be much less you'll be in much less advantageous position in the interview. You'll have to think not only what is he saying to you, but also what are you going to tell next, what's your next question. And if you do your homework and you have a set of questions and you studied your subject, then it's much easier. You only have to implement the plan which is already prepared. You don't have to invent the plan while you're doing the interview. Now, what is preparation? You have to know case details, of course. If there is fraud investigation, for example, we have to learn all the materials, financial transactions, KYC documents, contracts, invoices, basically to know what was going on in the financial or economic sense in that case. And also we have to learn, of course, about the person who we are going to interview. This is why we put KYC in quotation mark. Know your customer, know your subject. And it's very good if you know the basics about your interviewee. You'll be able to understand, for example, before the interview, like where he studied, what was his native town, what was his basic elements of biography, and it will help you a lot. Now, question areas. This is a bit of controversial topic. So some professionals prefer to have the questionnaire already prepared and printed out before the interview. Some professionals do not do this. I think it's very important to think about questioning areas which you are going to cover during the interview. And also to have the list. You can have a list. The trick here, you cannot just ignore what is being said to you by the other party and just go through your list no matter what. Because maybe the most interesting question is something which you didn't think about, but this person is about to tell you that, and you just go through your list irrespective of what is being said to you. It's important if you started the interview to follow through the end of every topic which is being discussed. Yeah, even if this topic is not on your list of questions, you have to carefully, patiently maintain communication in the direction where interviewee is taking you, and then you can get back to your main line of questioning. But you do not make the list dictate the flow of the interview. You go with the flow. Good interviewer listens 90% of the time and only speaks 10% of the time. Excellent interviewer will speak like 5% of the time, and 95% is just listening. And if all we do is mostly listening, that means we pay attention and we go with the flow of the interview. And you'll see in the latest example I'm going to show you that there is just one question and all the rest is interviewee speaking. And this is the good example of excellent interviewer. And of course you have to think about logistics, room layout, interviewers, props. So you have to, there are materials about how to prepare the room. For example, you cannot block the exit, otherwise you can be accused of false imprisonment, so-called in the United States. I think in England there is also this concept. So you cannot restrict the freedom of person to leave the room, for example. Other thing, if you put the table between you and the interviewee, you won't be able to observe his full range of body movements, and this is disadvantageous. It's much easier to observe, like, for example, if you have a chair and I'm in a chair and you can see the whole body. So table is not a good idea. You can have it on the side, but not between you and the subject. And of course you have to have such things as water, because it may take 2, 3, 4 hours, who knows. Facilities, you have to think about it in advance, and also not to be disturbed, of course. It should be a quiet room, free of any disturbance. And it shouldn't look like it's a prison cell or something like that. Okay. The key idea which you should just remember is fail to prepare, prepare to fail. And if you just, even if you Google interview preparation, you'll find a lot of this advice on the open source in the internet. Okay, next slide. Okay, importance of maintaining objectivity. This is, now we come to the area which more pertain to soft skills rather than hard skills. So people, especially experienced people, when they go into the interview room, they tend to have the good idea of what's happened because they've been through like lots of investigations and they knew a lot of bad people, especially like law enforcement. They do hundreds of interviews, hundreds of investigations. They see a lot of criminals, and the problem here, it tends to form opinion before the inquiry. It's very important not to do that. The set of mind, the mindset of interviewer should be, I don't know what happened, my task is to go and learn and get the truth. And it's very dangerous to formulate the opinion about the subject before you actually start your inquiry. And more so, think about this, you read the subject, subject reads you equally. And if you have certain thinking inside of your brain about this person, 99% this person will see it, understand it, feel your attitude. So if you already think that this person is guilty, for example, of crime, it will be very obvious to the subject, and he will just shut down. He will raise up his defenses. He can keep silence. He can just give you very small answers, or he can just walk out of the room. So it's important to maintain objectivity, not to formulate the opinion of what has happened or what may have happened before you actually before you're done with the interview. And more so, even in the course of the interview, you should maintain this objectivity by thinking that even if he committed a crime, he or she, it doesn't matter, it's not against you. It was not you who were robbed or killed or whatever. You are a professional interviewer. Your task is to get the answers to the questions, not to judge that person. You are not the prosecutor. You are not the judge. You are not the one who is, returning the verdict for this person. It's not your job. Your job is just to get the facts, the truth, and report it to whoever it needs to be reported. You are not there to judge. And this is very important because a lot of people will be judging. It's very easy. Okay. If you click on the picture, it should play a little audio.
Greetings, and let's take a few minutes and talk about preventing inadvertent interviewer disclosure by maintaining objectivity. The bottom line is this: how we think is how we come across. And how we come across plays no small role in the success or the failure of the interview outcome. So what we're looking at here is how to maintain objectivity so that our verbal, vocal, and nonverbal communication with the interviewee is conducive to the outcome of the interview that we want. And the bottom line is, studies show that how we relate or come across to that interviewee is more important than the techniques that we use. Have you ever been in a situation?
It's 9 minutes, so we won't listen to it all. But what Don Rabin said, it's more important how you come across than the techniques that they use. So the objectivity is more important than the hard skills. This is what I tried to tell you in the beginning. And this is the mindset thing. The best interviewer, for example, when they interview serial killers or serial criminals, they don't take attitude that this is a bad person. This is the worst thing, because it won't give you any chance to have a successful interview. What these people do, they treat this person, whatever he did, as a human being anyway. And they have a small talk and they offer tea or coffee. This is how the best interviews were conducted. And you'll see one of these in the end. Next slide, please. And empathy, of course, it's very important. This is another part of soft skills. You have to be able to maintain an empathetic relationship with your subject. Otherwise, it will be hard to establish good connection, personal connection with him or her. And empathy is like how you really think or treat this individual, and how you start your communication with this person, how you greet him or her at the very beginning. It all forms the part of your interpersonal dynamics, and empathy is where people feel good about talking to you, basically. This is what empathy is. And good interviewers are very empathetic people. You'll like just to talk to them in the street. And good spies as well. 45, 90, 180 seconds of the interview. This is the first 3 minutes of the interview is crucially important for the outcome, because this is the time where people will form their opinion of you. From the moment you enter the room. Basically how you dressed up, how you look, how you shake, how you maintain eye contact. It's all very important, and it's subconscious. You won't be able to change it. It happens on automatic level in people's mind, and if they form bad opinion of you, I'm bad in quotation mark, they don't like you, it will be very hard to overcome it afterwards. And if they form good opinion of you, they will think that you are not here to judge them, you are just doing your job. This will help you a lot during the interview. And preparation here for us is split for convenience in like 3 stages. First 45 seconds, eye contact, smile, fatigue communication. 90 seconds, name and handshake, and 180 seconds, finding commonality. I just put you some bullets. There is whole articles on each of these subjects, and if somebody is really interested, I can send you reading materials. But eye contact, it's important. You have to maintain appropriate amount of eye contact. 50-50 across all cultures is approximately right balance. If you stare too much, it may be seen as offensive. If you don't look at all, you will, first of all, you'll miss a lot, and second of all, you won't be seen as empathetic communicator, definitely. Smile, it's very powerful thing, a genuine smile. It's very powerful. A fake smile doesn't work that way. And yeah, a genuine smile is where these muscles here around the eyes, they contract and you see wrinkles. And this is one of the things. A fake smile, if it's just lips, and it's produced by neocortex, by our conscious mind, and it's very much seen because neocortex do not control these muscles, and neocortex only control few muscles. So you cannot fake a genuine smile, basically. You have to genuinely smile if you want to be liked. Calling person by his or her name is super important, because think about it this way. From the childhood, from kindergarten, teachers, parents, adults call children by their name to get attention. So calling somebody by their name automatically gets attention towards you from that person, subconscious again. It's very important. Most of people will think that you consider them important enough to remember their name. Most of us do not. And it's important, especially if you see the person, for example, second time, and you call the person by the name. It puts you automatically on that person's mind to the good list. He remembers my name. That probably means I'm somewhat important to that person. Handshake, again, there's different types of handshakes. One of this is dead fish, don't do this. And firm, good handshake also sends the subconscious signal about you, your openness. So when you enter the room, calling person by name, smiling, maintaining eye contact, doing good handshake will help to set up the stage for you. And finding commonality, 180 seconds, first 3 minutes, you have to have a small talk and just try to find something in common between you and him. Rock band, book, a country, place of vacation, something in common. It's definitely something in common between any two people. And if you find it, it's much easier to maintain your initial communication around that topic. And this is called small talk. But for us interviews, it's not a small talk, it's a big talk. It's important. Next slide, please. Interviewing strategy. It's a very simple formula, and I make it simple for a reason. It's easy to remember. So interviewer I influences interviewee or subject S to produce behavior. But now this arrow of control goes from I to S, but for bad interviewer, it will easily go the other way around. It will go from S to I, and you'll see the example of that. So maintaining control is the job of interviewer, and this job goes with 10 versus 90% talking. Maintaining control doesn't mean you talk 90% of the time. You listen a lot, and you ask proper questions, and you maintain professional, unbiased attitude. This is what gives you control. And if you do it right, you'll be able to produce behavior you want. But if you don't do it right, the control arrow will go from S to I, and interviewee will control the interview. And the outcome, as you can imagine, will be not what you want. So behavior will be not the one you want. Behavior you want is for this person to tell you the truth. Next slide. Okay, interviewing process A, B, C, and D, also very simple, easy to remember. A, allow subject to speak. As I said, good interview, 90% or at least 80% of time is for him or her to speak, and for you just to ask questions and listen. And this is quite challenging because interview can take 2-3 hours, sometimes more, and all the time you have to listen, and you have to listen carefully. Be attentive, it's very important. It's called active listening. You have to not just listen to the words which are being said, but also you have to observe non-vocal behavior and verbal behavior. There are 3 types of behavior: vocal, verbal, and non-verbal, and all are equally important. And actually verbal behavior, the words are less. They carry less meaning than the other types of behavior. Therefore, good interviewer will be paying attention to all 3 communication channels, verbal, vocal, and non-verbal, to understand, see where the changes are happening. And the changes are crucial. Where the changes in behavior are happening, it's likely that the person is under some sort of stress and anxiety. And this is the first indicator that you probably hit on an important topic. And then the D of the process is direct subsequent questions into the areas where changes were noted. So to be able to direct your subsequent questions to the areas where changes were noted, you have to note the changes, obviously. And changes can be very subtle, they can be very minimal. Good liar, good subject, good criminal will not let you understand when he is worried, for example, because he knows all of this better than most of us. Next slide. Then important thing, power of silence. Silence is not space to fill in. It's not something that should be uncomfortable to good interviewer. It's actually a very powerful thing, and you have to be comfortable with silence. A lot of people are not comfortable. They try to speak. They're just not comfortable in sitting in silence. They think that something should be said necessarily. That's not the case. First of all, why silence is important? It gives that person to think and to wait, like what to tell you, whether to tell you the truth, for example, or not. And it requires a lot of consideration, as you can see, and you have to just to give that person time to make his mind. Now, people who can maintain and be comfortable with silence, they control the interview. And it's not that communication stops during silence. It still goes on, but on different channels. On non-verbal, you still have body language. You still communicate. It's just not that you're not using your verbal communication channel. So yeah, just remember, silence is not the space to fill in. It's an important thing, and you have to be comfortable. Even if it's initially uncomfortable, you have to teach yourself to be comfortable with silence. And I put the gaze of this big cat there because you can see that she or he is silent, but the communication is there. You can read this gaze. There's a lot of energy and power, and the signal is going still. So the same with the interviewer. If you're silent, doesn't mean you're not communicating to the other person. Okay, now detecting deception. So interview is a set of questions and answers. So for example, you have 4 topics of your interview, A, B, C, and D. And you just, as interviewer, you go through your topics A, B, C, and D, you ask questions, you get answers. What you do, you observe behaviors. You observe verbal, vocal, and non-verbal behaviors. So when a person wants to tell you the truth, he will produce one set of behavior. We call it V1, VO1 and V1. And then the person wants to deceive you, he will produce the other set of behaviors, V2, VO2, and V2. You have to notice that. You have to notice this change because you won't know in advance whether A, B, C, and D, which topic is the most sensitive for the subject. You will only be able to learn about it through questioning and through noticing the changes in verbal, vocal, and non-verbal behavior. And once you notice the changes, it's not that you just jump on that person and start questioning him in that area. You actually go on with your questions as though nothing have happened. Then later on you can return to this question and see if again it produces the change in behavior. And then subsequently the golden rule is 3. If 3 times you see that the certain subject produces change in behavior, then you can have the hypothesis that in this area there's a probability of deception. So, and then your strategy would be in the second phase of the interview to question just area C, because you know A, B, and D is most probably he's truthful, but in C there's elements of signs of potential deception. That's why you question there. This is how you identify your most sensitive topics. But like, for example, first part of the interview, you just go through all your questions A, B, C, and D, and you don't even indicate that you understood that C is important. Then on the second phase, you go to C. Because at this point, you learned everything which could be learned by non-probing questions, and then you transfer to the probing questions. Okay, next slide. So deception, stress, and anxiety. The elements of stress and anxiety are the elements of stress and anxiety. It's not necessarily caused by deception. Yes, deception causes stress, but not only deception causes stress. A lot of other factors can cause stress, and if you see some of these signals here, some of these symptoms, you cannot automatically reach the conclusion that this is because of deception. It can be due to other factors which you may not know about. For example, you interview a person and he or she demonstrates signs of anxiety, some of these signs here. And maybe she just forgot to switch off the gas in her apartment, and she's worried that it's going to blow up. Or maybe the time is coming and she has to go to the school run. You don't know. You don't know what causes stress in that individual. Therefore, if you jump to conclusion, because he is producing some of the signs of some of these verbal and non-verbal clues of anxiety, this is where he is lying. Not necessarily. It may be due to other factors, and good interviewers, they were caught up in this. They went too fast to the conclusion what was the real cause of stress, and therefore they prejudged the interview. Now, what are the actual clues? And you'll see a lot of these clues in the examples. So verbal clues: changes in speech patterns, voice pitch. People's voice will change. The sound of it will change in the difficult topics. Repetition of questions. So they will repeat your question. This is a sign of stress. Comments regarding the interview, oaths, feigned unconcern. Answering question with a question, selective memory. These are verbal behaviors. Not all of them, there are more, but some of them. Non-verbal clues, full body motions. Illustrators, primarily with the hands. So, for example, a person will play with something. He will play. And this is just the way for people to let out stress, playing with things. Especially people who are more nervous, you'll see it in the video. Hands over mouth, touching mouth, lips, just closing your mouth is another stress. And it's all happening subconsciously. People cannot control this, basically. Normal people cannot control this. Manipulators, displacement activities, so people will, for example, they will go like this, or like they change the complete posture. You'll see it as well. Fleeing positions. Next slide, please. Just remember that these are just physical signs of stress relief. It's not the physical signs of the lies, the deception. Can you put next slide? Yeah. Okay, so we've been very quickly through the theoretical part of interviewing skills, and now we'll try to, of course it's difficult after just half an hour, but we'll try to see like what you remember and how you can implement what you've learned, theory to some practical examples. You'll have 3 videos, 2 videos and 1 audio file. The video first just demonstrates you the interview, which is poorly prepared. I'm giving you right away. Poorly prepared, and you will see, for example, a lot of elements of bad interview. And I want you not to be like this interviewer in the first video. Second video, you'll have, it's ACFE, part of ACFE training program. You'll have 5 or 6 different subjects interviewed on a certain situation where the task was to deceive the interviewer. So it's like not real, they were told to tell lies, but they're still producing the same signs of stress and anxiety, which you just seen on the slide. And finally, you'll have the audio of the real police interrogation of a suspect of a murder. And it's just audio, and it's not very loud. You'll have to pay a lot of attention to capture it, but it's really the most interesting out of 3, and also it will show you the same signs of stress and anxiety, but on verbal and vocal levels. You cannot see the person, there is no non-verbal. Of course, the police interviewer saw the person, but you will only hear the recording of this interview. Okay, so next slide, and if you can just click.
Justice Alito said he didn't tell her. She said she didn't tell him, but you're sure she told you?
Absolutely.
Now, you wrote a book a couple of years ago, is that right? 2018, you
Yes.
wrote a book?
Yes.
I want to read a section from that book. It's a section where you relate you and your family attended oral arguments at the court. You were there in the courtroom, and that directly involved your brother Paul, also a reverend. And I just want to read this section. You said, with the single rap of the gavel, Chief Justice William Rehnquist announced, We'll hear argument first this morning in number 95-1065. Reverend Paul Schenck and Dwight Saunders versus Pro-Choice Network of Western New York. Paul and I winked at each other, knowing we had made history with that Reverend in his name. It had been a minor victory when we persuaded the court that Reverend should remain before Paul's name, even though we had been told repeatedly that legal briefs never included. Was there a word missing that's different from what you put in your book?
A title, yes.
What was that title?
Reverend.
Reverend was not there. Right? Did you wink at your brother?
I think I did. In fact, I think I actually
Oh, wow.
hooked him.
So now you got more details. You got the key detail wrong, what you were writing about in your book, but now you remember an additional detail. You not only winked, you elbowed your brother.
I think
Even though the reason for the wink in your writing was the fact that Reverend was using the title, something that had never been done, but it wasn't used. But we're supposed to believe you today. We're supposed to take your word over Justice Alito's word. We're supposed to take your word over a lady who gave you dollars donated to your cause, Miss Gail Wright. You're disparaging her name, Justice Alito's name, and the court. And you have this, which obviously didn't happen. We got the transcript, we got the audio, but you made it a big deal in your book. One thing I've learned, people who mislead folks on small things, mislead them on big things. And you know what? You can lie in a book, it's not a crime. You can lie to the New York Times, that's not a crime. But when you come in front of Congress and you say things that are not true, you're not allowed to do that. You're not supposed to do that. And we have seen it. You're not supposed to do that. I yield back.
So yeah, basically, this is how you should not conduct the interview. The split of time of talking between interviewer, that person, and interviewee, as you can see, probably 90% of him talking and 10% of the other. And then probably you observed that the control of the interview didn't go from interviewer to interviewee. The other guy was much more powerful by short answers. The other guy controlled the interview. And the end result of this is complete failure. He said, I yield back. Yeah, he basically gave up. Although he had the evidence, apparently he put some screenshots on the big screen there, but this interview went very badly. So the reason I'm showing to you, this is example of bad preparation and bad self-control. You don't do like this. The course of what they discussed is not that important. What's important is the preparation point. Yeah, and this was obviously a big failure because it's like Senate hearing. Now the second psychology of deception, the second video is ACFE training material. It's very interesting. Basically, I won't tell you much. You'll understand from the video itself what is it about. 5 different people will be interviewed here, and your task is to try to see as many signs of deception as you can, even more than you'll be hinted by the ACFE representative there what is the sign of deception they're going to produce, but you can try to capture more because there's more. Yeah.
Tire on the way here. Blowout.
I had a flat tire on the way here, and a nice little old lady stopped to let me use her cell phone, and I couldn't get a hold of you.
When our interviewer, John Fisher Weber, a certified fraud examiner with the Texas State Auditor's Office, offers this subject a ride back to his car, his hand repeatedly goes to his face. He knows he can't accept a ride without revealing that he didn't really have it flat.
Are you more comfortable if I drove you over since you know me?
No, I don't think that'd be good at all.
Did you hear something about my driving? Or?
No, I just, well...
There are several behaviors associated with deception that involve the mouth. Look for obstruction behavior like this one. The subconscious goal of this conduct is to impede anything damaging from emerging. Wetting the lips and pressing them together is a sign of stress too.
Okay. Did you put the spare on it? Or? No, I couldn't get the lug nuts off. Okay. Cool.
After his fabrication, he presses his lips together. So does this subject.
Did you lose control of your car?
No, not really. I noticed and I pulled to the right.
Okay.
This behavior is a simple reaction to tension. Since lying increases stress, mouth movement is an ideal barometer for rising anxiety levels.
For a lady to stop in today's day and age,
I know.
that's incredible.
She was really nice, yeah.
And
Definitely.
a nice car, right?
Nice.
Sometimes we've been told to look someone in the eye when we speak. People are naturally reluctant to meet the eyes of the person they're deceiving, for fear that their falsehood will be discovered. During the initial phase of an interview, establish what you think is the normal amount of eye contact for a subject. As your questions increase the pressure, look for a reduction in that amount. If a subject is being deceptive, he might look down at his hands or at the ceiling as if trying to remember something. The point, though, is to avoid looking at the interviewer, as this subject does here.
That was an awful nice lady that stopped. Tell me about her and what she drove and everything.
She drove a blue sedan, and we basically just talked about the job interview, and I kind of told her to hurry up.
Note how this next subject looks down throughout his answer to Weber's question.
What are you gonna do with your car?
Probably get it fixed. Have it towed into a service
People
shop.
tend to blink more often when they're trying to think quickly, like this subject, when asked about the color of the car.
And what color was it?
It was green. She blinks before and several times after answering. Take another look. It was green. Eyebrows are one of the easier facial features to read. When we're angry, we frown. When we're surprised, we raise our eyebrows, just like this man does when faced with an unexpected question.
Actually, my brother was going to go by there, and Chase got an extra set of keys. He was going to change the tire for me.
Well, how did you get a hold of him?
Good question.
What color was the car?
It was brown.
Delaying tactics like the one we just saw indicate hesitation, uncertainty, and a desire to postpone answering. Truthful subjects are unlikely to formulate their answers that way.
What did you talk about in the waiting room?
Just how much I couldn't believe that this happened
Of all time.
of all times on my way to an interview.
What'd she say to that?
She was kind of shocked, giggling.
She was shocked and giggling?
Yeah.
Because she's experiencing stress as a result of trying to deceive Weber, her answer doesn't make sense. She's nervous and flustered, but still trying to appear that all is well. So is this subject.
Okay. Which tire was it?
It was my front right tire.
Front rear.
People who are being deceptive are likely to make conflicting statements, like the one this subject makes when asked about the car.
I didn't see what color it was. I don't remember.
It's also common to drop the ball on details. After all, fabrications can become pretty complicated. John Weber catches this gentleman with a very simple question.
Do you need a token for the parking garage?
Yes, please.
When he realizes what he said, he even laughs at his own mistake.
Oh, no, you don't need a token for the parking garage.
No, I don't.
You don't have a car. Okay.
Repeating phrases allows the subject more time to think of an answer. The phrase "you know" appears 3 times in this subject's answer. As we'll see later on, this particular phrase can furthermore indicate that the subject is seeking validation.
What did you talk about on the way over, just out of curiosity?
I just told I was, that I was actually coming to an interview, and that kind of telling about what I was expecting or what I did, and asked her kind of what she did and stuff like that.
Sometimes the phrase itself can be more telling than they intend.
Believe it or not, had a flat tire.
How did you get here?
Believe it or not, a lady stopped.
The phrase precedes a falsehood in both instances. Fragmented speech can be an additional sign of deceit. When caught in a stressful situation that requires them to lie, some people begin to speak in broken, stumbling sentences, often trailing off without finishing a thought.
What will you do about your car?
I guess, I didn't have time to, I don't think I had a spare in my car, so I'm just gonna, afterwards I'll just go get a cab and go get another spare and go put it on.
As the pressure increases, so does his difficulty in thinking of the details of his story. Eventually, he runs out of answers.
Is there something wrong or?
The deal is I didn't actually have a flat tire this morning.
In nervous subjects, you'll observe what are called manipulators, playing with pens, twisting rings on their fingers, tapping, basically anything to occupy their hands. These manipulators may intensify when your questions become more serious. During non-stressful questions, this subject's hand motions are normal. But watch how his manipulators increase when talking about his lateness.
I noticed you were a little bit late today. What happened?
I had a flat tire.
Oh boy.
I had a flat tire one of those days.
Which tire had the flat? Is it dangerous?
No, it wasn't dangerous to the left rear. Wasn't dangerous to pull it over to the side. The lady stopped. I called, no one could pick me up. She came and dropped me off, luckily.
This subject's posture changes as he's asked to describe the woman who stopped to help him.
I think she had blonde hair, kind of short, really couldn't tell.
His shift in posture wasn't that striking, but when combined with his vague description and uncertain tone, we begin to see a pattern.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, hopefully you were able to see some patterns which we just observed. So verbal people were stumbling, repeating questions, answering in very uncertain tone, or sometimes they were just, changing. They said not what they were asked for, but because of something else, and this is because of stress. You've seen non-verbal elements, signs of stress, such as manipulators, shifting postures, hands, mouth. You may have noticed actually also the dryness of mouth. One person was demonstrating that. And also you've seen you may have seen the verbal, the tone of voice changes when people lie, basically. And this is just the not real situation. These people were instructed to give a false account of why they were late to the interview. So they were instructed to lie. So it's not as stressful for them. It's not, they knew that they're going to try to deceive the interviewer by giving the answers to the question, and they still produced the same behaviors which we discussed. Now the last interview is the real one. It's the police interview in case of unfortunate child murder, and this is the best interview, one of the best interviews. You'll see the proper distribution of time between interviewer and the subject, and there's just one question. Of course, it's not the whole interview, it's just the part of the big interview. But this interviewer was able to, in this long interview, basically to get the subject to admission. Although in the beginning it was complete denial. By carefully listening, try to see what signs of deception in verbal and vocal behavior you can capture. Remember, one of the guys in the previous example used a lot of, kind of things like this, uncertainty, and try to capture these signs as well. It has to be on maximum volume now because it's not super loud.
Just start by telling me what's going on. What happened today?
Got up this morning and, my girlfriend, she needed to go and get some money out of the bank for her mom, I guess. Something had happened and she needed to go to the bank. She said, I need to hurry, and I said, well, leave the baby. So she had put the baby down and she was sleeping, or I think she was sleeping, should I say. And she left, it had probably been several minutes, maybe 5 or 6. And the baby started crying. And it was kind of unusual because she cries, but not usually like she did. So what I did, I went in, and I gave her bottle. She was kind of like, lifted her head up, so I rolled her, more or less on her side and gave her bottle. She started taking the bottle, seemed to quiet down a little bit, and, so I went back in the room, because I was sitting there eating, just had the TV on, but wasn't really paying attention. I was just trying to eat my food, I was really hungry. And it didn't seem more than a couple minutes. I would have to say within probably another 3 minutes, I heard her like choking and gasping, and you know, it just was very unusual because I hadn't ever heard her do that. So I went in there and she was just kind of kicking and flailing her legs, you know, and I was just like, you know, what's going on here? And you know, she was kind of gasping, but more or less through her nose. So I kind of opened her mouth to see what was wrong, and some fluid came out. It was, I don't know, can't say that it was formula because, you know, it just happened kind of quick. It was just, you know, just some kind of fluid, and you know, she started gasping again, and so I just, you know, I didn't know what to do. You know, I figured she's choking, she's kicking again. So I remember from the first day that I had, they said, you want to try to clear the throat. So I, you know, stuck my finger in her mouth and, you know, try to do like, I guess what they call finger sweep. I believe that's what it's called. And she kind of gasped again, and, you know, and it was like, it was blood, but it was like a real watery type of blood that came out of her mouth. And, you know, I immediately, I got very scared, very panicked. I, you know, didn't know what was going on. You know, there was a wash rag that was in the bathroom. I got that, and you know, I wiped her up, and I just.
What color rag was it?
Yeah, that's it. So the point I was trying to make with this, the proper distribution of time. You see, there's just one question: why don't you tell me what was going on? Why don't you tell me what happened? This is only one question, and the rest of time, subject is speaking. And all the interviewer needs to do is to listen carefully, very carefully. And there was a lot of signs of deception here. And you may have captured some of this. A lot of you know, kind of. This whole section in the interviewing curriculum devoted to verbal analysis of what words mean, basically. And I don't want to go into too much details, but if you analyze just the words, the recording transcript of this interview, you'll see a lot of signs that the suspect was indicating here to the interviewer. But the interviewer didn't interrupt him, he was just listening, and he waited till the end of when he finished answers, 2 minutes almost, to ask his next question. And I said, this is a good, I mean, for us interviewers, it's good interview because it ended up with the admission of serious crime by that person. Initially, of course, he was denying that he had anything to do with the child's death, but he was the murderer. And the way how the interviewer was able to convince him is because he had all the skills I told you about, not just to ask the questions, not just to detect deception, but also, the most important, to change the behavior of person from telling lies to telling the truth. And this required this interviewer, the police officer, incredible amount of energy and self-control, because you can probably understand how emotionally difficult it is to treat the person who is suspect of the murder of a child, of a small baby, in a very neutral way. And this guy maintained this. He didn't put himself in the judge's robe. He didn't put himself as a prosecutor announcing the criminal penalty for this. He was just doing his job. He was asking questions and listening and trying to relate to this person and treat him still as a human being. This is how he converted the person from denying the crime to admitting the crime. And this is incredible. Like the whole video, I saw the video, is like 2 or 3 hours long, and they're just talking. This is one of the points. But remember the first interview, 90% of talking by interviewer, and this interview, 1% talking of interviewer. Just one question and listening. Okay, I think we're almost done. There's one more slide. It's a common interviewing mistakes. There's also this whole podcast called Fraud Talk, where Don Rayburn talks through this 5 in detail. You can again find it and listen to it if you're interested. And it reiterates the points which I made during the presentation. Failure to plan is the biggest mistake, one of the biggest mistakes. If you don't plan, if you don't prepare yourself, not only to the specific interview, but generally to be professional interviewer, failure to plan, plan to failure, you'll fail. Confirmation bias, if you go with biased opinion of that, if you go, for example, in this child investigation and you know, oh, this is a killer, so you formulate your judgment about him before asking questions, it will definitely negatively influence the interview, and it will not allow you to get to the goal of the interview. You won't be able to get the admission for sure. Comfort zone, a lot of us, we feel that what we reach so far is good comfort zone, we can relax and not study well. No, this is not true. The good analogy here, good phrase is your best interview is still ahead of you. Whatever you do, you still have to train more, learn more, because your best interview is ahead of you and you don't know it yet, what it's going to be. Diminishing capacity to pay attention, this is 21st century disease. Like we all scroll gadgets for hours and hours, we can pay attention to Instagram much more, to another person speaking to us. So statistics show 5-8 minutes general average adult attention span. So, and it was like a few years ago. Now I think it's probably even less than 5 to 8 minutes. Interviewer has to listen for hours. For hours, attentively listen, and not just listen to what is said, but also observe all types of behaviors. And mistake number 5, taking case or interview personally. If you are being lied, it's not about you. If this suspect committed a crime, it's not against you. You are there as a professional. If you investigate the case against you or your family, you are conflicted out, you shouldn't take this. You only investigate cases where you have zero relationship, and that's why you are able to take it professionally, not personally. And this is very important to maintain objectivity, not to take interview personally, because some people, then they're being lied, and then they understand that they're being lied, they get angry, and getting angry is equal to losing control. I think that's it. Yeah, it's a podcast. Just next slide. Yeah, you can listen in much more detail. The whole podcast, you can just find it. It's Fraud Talk. It's free. I think Q&A. If you have any questions.